Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Drinking and Reading, Coffee and Weird Tales. I will be slowly sipping that second cup because I'm not well. Anyway, and also welcome to part 3 of Dimensional Doors by Hans Bock. So this is quite a long story, and it's going to be, I don't know how many parts there's going to be. Find out. Okay, so where last we left Eddie, our beloved Eddie was down and out because he'd run away from home. I don't know what his deal is. Anyway, aside from that, Eddie's down and out because he's got no money. Something happened and then something else happened. And he's met a guy in the park at night, and they've gone back to this guy's house, and it looks like the Arabian Nights. So yeah, and Eddie's asked if this guy is an artist, because I just realised after watching the other video back that for no reason at all, this guy took Eddie into another room where there was a bunch of blank picture frames. And there didn't seem to be a point to that. Unless there'll be a point later on, and I'm sure there will. It just, I don't know, it seemed like a weird sort of introduction. Almost a bit pointless for something that's probably not very pointless. Do you know what I mean? Let's find out. So far, so good. I'm enjoying this story. Alright, let's move this over here. So yes, and now they're chatting about... He locked the door and they returned to the kitchen. He indicated that Eddie was to sit, and while he set the table and dished out the food, he questioned, "What do you think about life? Have you any ambitions?" "I just want to have a nice home and a good job." "And your home life? What was it like?" "Yes, Eddie, come on, tell us everything," again. Eddie did not realize then that I can't pronounce this, can I? Aslanvik merely wanted to make sure that no one would inquire after him in case he should drop out of sight. He answered dutifully. At last the giant thrust forth a hand to be shaken. Eddie took it. "Yes, you'll do," the big man said. "My name is Rude Aslanvik. Rhude. His name is Rude." "I'm Eddie Foster." "Eddie Foster," Aslanvik repeated thoughtfully. "Well, Eddie, I could tell that you are an I could tell that you were an adventurous type. There'll be plenty of adventure for you." Fuck away from me. "There'll be plenty of adventure for you, even action, if you can stand it. Later on, when you've proven your worth to me by carefully attending to the tasks with which I intend starting you." I'd leave, but it's just me. It was a different time. As they ate, he furthered, "You will find that I'm not like other people. I have a profession of a sort. You might call it bartering. But my markets are not like the prosaic things. No. With me," his eyes lighted exultantly, "with me you will find yourself surrounded by incredible romance, beauty, mystery, wealth." His voice dropped a note lower as he added, "and danger." No, I can't. I'm too sick to do. "And danger." No, that's not what I'm saying. Fuck. "And danger. Perhaps death." His eyes became bleak. Can I trust you?" "Oh, sure," Eddie said easily, figuring that he could back out of anything unreasonable or dishonest. This stranger and his talk, they didn't sound just right. Mystery and wealth, danger, perhaps death. Was this Aslanvik a Nazi spy? Okay, so if anybody watched the previous video and you can remember the description of Islandvik in the park, was he a Nazi spy? Islandvik scanned Eddie's emptied plate. Had enough? Thanks, yes. The giant stood. Come along, then. He conducted Eddie back to the room where the white panels hung. Unlocking the door, he said, I call this my hall of entrances. Why all the locks? You'd think that you had a treasure in there instead of bare canvases. Ah, but there is a treasure in here, and they are not canvases, they are bare. What? Nor are they bare. The door opened. They went within to one of the frames. Islandvik ordered, Inspect it carefully. It was an amazing bit of canvas. There were intricate squirmy forms of dragons, interlaced flowers and strange abstractions. Eddie said, swell job of carving. An antique? Oh, very, Islandvik answered, mockery and impatience in his tone. But what about the jeweled eyes of the dragons? Haven't you noticed them? Looking again, Eddie discovered the inlaid smoky crystals. Islandvik touched one of the reptilian heads. See, there is no eye in this socket, he said, slipping off a ring and handing it to Eddie, who had noticed it but had not thought anything of it. If Islandvik wanted to wear a ring big as a moon, that was Islandvik's business. All right, it was a ring, but what had it to do with the frames? Eddie gazed up from the circle to Islandvik, who took the trinket from him. The giant thrust the ring, red gem foremost, into the dragon's eye socket, twisted it, and it remained in place. The ring's bezel was threaded like a screw, Eddie realized. Islandvik explained, the jewel is a key. Eddie did not understand, but nodded sagely all the same, and later on, Islandvik elucidated. But as Islandvik uttered those words and stuck the ring into the eye cavity of the dragon, Eddie heard a soft sighing sound, then a snap. Okay. The white panel had disappeared from the frame, vanished into nothingness. A minute later, it had been before the two men, and now suddenly, A minute earlier, it had been before the two men, and now suddenly, it was as though it had never been there. They should have been able to see blank wall space behind the empty frame, but no. Stretching before them on the opposite side of the frame was an endless landscape of drifted sand. Not a picture, but reality. Why, it was like standing at a window! Well then. It just didn't seem possible. Eddie turned to Islandvik, then back where the panel had been. He put his hand forward, touching nothing, and withdrew it rather quickly. Islandvik untwisted his ring from the dragon's head, laughed at him. Eddie heard another fleeting gasp, another snap, and the panel was in its place again, a blank white surface in a black frame. It had appeared out of the air. Islandvik nonchalantly slipped his ring back on his hand and motioned for Eddie to follow him from the room. But Eddie could not. He stood stone-legged and mouth hanging open, trying to convince himself that Islandvik had either doped or hypnotized him. The big man gestured again, starting away, and somehow Eddie managed to trail after him. His mouth hanging open, trying to convince himself that Islandvik had either doped or hypnotized him. The big man gestured again, starting away, and somehow Eddie managed to trail after him. What was it, he asked. Another room full of sand, doctored up by false perspectives to look like the whole Sahara? What do you use it for? No one fucking talks like that. Anyway. Islandvik said nothing just then, only shook his keys and cocked his head mysteriously. I don't know how you do that. Anyway. They went to the overdressed living room. He waved Eddie to a chair, poured them both another swallow of that grey wine of his, and passed the glass to Eddie. He sat down. He said, "Every one of those white panels you've seen, every one of them opens on worlds such as that sandy one sandy one I showed you. Not rooms filled with sand, as you seem to think, but worlds. Worlds like our own. But they are constructed from forces alien to ours, bridged to ours by indeterminate forces. The smoky crystals which I pointed out to you in the frames all radiate a vibration. Spaced as they are, the vibrations neutralize each other." He sipped his wine. What are these vibrations? Light, of course. But light and heat and sound, they are all the same thing, basically. And when this key, this ring, he held up his hand and the red gem smoldered, is fitted into the cavity in the frame, its radiations affect those of the others, creating a forceless gap between the alien worlds of our and Its radiations affect those of the others, creating a forceless gap between the alien worlds and ours. Then it is possible to cross the gap from here to there. You follow me? Eddie was not quite sure whether or not he did, but Slamvik was obviously sincere enough, and after all, the thing had happened. Why try to account for facts? Eddie was no scientist. He shrugged, taking it all for granted. If it rained fire, he told himself, people might look at it for a few minutes, asking why. Or how, but as soon as they were burned, they'd have proof enough. As Slamvik drained his glass, put it down and leaned forward. "Now that you've seen," he said, "will you stay and help me here? If I pay you by giving you a world of your own to do with as you wish, think of it, a complete world of which you will be sole master." Eddie said, "I can't see any point in being a master of a desert." The giant frowned. "Only one of my doorways opens on a desert. Why, I have forest worlds, metal worlds, places of fire, of water, of pure light." You who were so astounded, yes, astounded by the opening of the door, how could such as you possibly dream of the infinite infinite variety of my worlds? His face was without character, but his voice sneered. "Well, will you stay?" "Yes, Eddie, will you?" Eddie temporized. "Let me think it over for a while." There was a silence while the big man studied him. At last, as Slamvik arose, "It's late. You'd better get some sleep. I'll show you to a bedroom. You can tell me your decision in the morning." Eddie lagged after him into a small bedroom, evidently set apart for guests. There was thick dust on the dresser top, on the windowsill, as though the room had not been in use for a long period. He unhitched his necktie as Slamvik standing at the door. "There's an adjoining bathroom, so you won't have to step out into the hall during the night." There was a secret meaning to his words. Was he warning Eddie to keep inside the room, that he did not trust Eddie with his frames, locked away though they were? He pointed out the door to Eddie. This other is a closet," he said, "and so good night. See you in the morning. I'll wake you at 8. He went out, closing the door behind him. Eddie dragged off his clothes. He was too groggy to hang his things in the closet and threw them over the back of a chair by the bed. He washed in the bathroom, turned off the light, and slid under the bed covers. Weary as he was, he could not sleep. He lay puzzling over what he had seen. Then something was walking back and forth in the hall outside his door. Back and forth, the feet thudding softly. Not as Slamvik. By now Eddie knew the giant's tread. No, this was something else. From the sound of it, the thing must be a Great Dane. So that was the reason that Eddie must not step out into the hall, as Landvik had a dog, and presumably not a very friendly one. Eddie presumes a lot, but anyway, true. If someone's warned you against doing something, just don't fucking do it. Whatever. I think I'm going to stop there because it's a fairly decent time for a reading. So that's part 3 of Dimensional Doors by Hans Bock. I'm enjoying this. It's obviously not as upbeat as the very brief The Ghost Punch. It's a fantastic story. But it's not bad. I'm very interested. I'm very curious as to what's going to happen. I think this is the first really quite long one that I've read, I think. I'm not sure. Yeah, probably. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this reading, and I hope you will come back for part 4. Yeah. That's all I have to say. If you've enjoyed, please like the video. And if you would like to see more, please subscribe. I would love for you to join me. That's it. I don't have anything else to say. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Cheers. And thanks for joining me.